All right, Yash, welcome back, part two. That's the first time I've had to say part two, so welcome back to Tasty
Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for coming back. So many people were saying, when is he coming back?
To people call me back when I owe them money.
Yeah, which is actually the case of what's happening now. So, like the first time we did this, we were a little bit pressed for time, so we sort of shortened one down into I think it was 30 minutes, and I did say on that, I'll get you back because of some great stuff you were talking about actually afterwards as we were going down in the lift.
Yes.
So I believe I ended, because I genuinely don't watch any of these, which is why they're so good. But no, the thing is I did say that someone that runs a laughter company here, a comedy, live comedy company here, said to me that the strange thing that's taken place over the last few years is comedians like to come to Dubai because there's more freedom of speech than there actually is now in places like the UK. I think a question I just wanted to sort of go with is just how much, when you're writing a set or you're writing a show, do you take into consideration the new world of mass offense taking to stuff like comedy? Like, does it affect you or...
No, I mean, to be honest, it should be funny at the end of the day. I think people get offended at stuff that out of 4 people, 2 people found it really funny and they reshared it, and there were 2 people who just didn't find it funny, right? So I think when for me, the writing process, I try to write something that is actually funny. I think of making sure that 3 out of those 4 people would laugh at this thing. And that one person, he's just sad. Like, we cannot do much about it, right? I'm more worried about the jokes getting viral and the non-comedy audience watching it. I think, which is what we discussed. In the first part. But I don't really. I don't get too bothered when I write for a live audience. It's because I think live audience. They are the chill ones because they have signed up for it.
Yeah.
They know what they are going for. It's the audience that watches a video when a video gets viral, when it reaches out to the non-comedy audience, because they think we are doing a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a presentation. It's not a seminar. It's not a TEDx. Like, it's comedy.
Yeah.
And they don't get it, which is why they take offense. And obviously, we know these people are probably the most fun at parties.
Yes.
So
yeah, like the kind of, why are you here? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
These type of ones.
So that's the whole problem, right? So when a music video or a dance video that goes viral, it doesn't, it's a more massy art form. Like, you don't need much of intellect to understand a music sounding good or a dance looking good. But like when it comes to comedy, like, you need to have a certain level of humor, or you shouldn't be taking yourself too seriously. Like, it's that kind of a mindset, and then you could find that funny. But if you're someone who take yourself too seriously, or you don't watch comedy in general, or you just watch serial killer stuff. Actually, I figured that people who watch serial killer stuff are very funny.
Do you watch a lot of serial killer stuff?
Yeah,
I watch a lot of serial killer stuff.
And we are funny. We're funny. I'm funny. Yeah, serial killers are funny.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you could have.
I was going to say, have you been abroad? Have you gone outside of the UAE and done shows? Where have you been?
I performed in Australia.
Okay.
Twice, and I've done well. But with Australia is it's like, it depends where you're performing. Mm-hmm. Like, when I performed in Sydney a few times, I felt Sydney was pretty much like
How long
Dubai.
ago was this?
This year, starting of this year and the year before.
Okay, so very recent.
Yeah,
okay.
So the year before I was in Sydney, and I felt Sydney was very similar to Dubai. It just, there are Arabs who've been living in Australia, Indians who've been living in Australia, white Australians, and so it's a very and Asians, of course, and it's like Dubai. It's like a Dubai audience, but everyone has an Australian accent, like that's, and they love it. And but the problem is whenever I performed in Australia for a complete white audience, there I get a very mixed bag of a reaction, because I feel like countries like Australia, England. There's a lot of white guilt that's creeping in. So people, they don't want to laugh at my misery.
There's a lot of, what did you say?
The white guilt.
Oh, white guilt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So they just don't want to laugh at my misery because they feel like
I've now got white guilt that I didn't understand that the first time you said it. Yeah.
That's the thing for white guilt. Like some people get it, some don't.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. I mean,
So what are you, I have to ask, what are you saying that may be provoking, not, I don't know, this like white guilt? Like, are you having a pop at us, or are you having a pop at yourself, or the way that...
No, when you talk about, the whole theme of when an Indian guy was talking about the Indian stuff and what Indians go through and stuff like that. So that's like a whole third world perspective, right? The third world perspective. So, so they do get that white guilt, like, oh, we live that privileged life.
Ah, okay.
They don't. Should we be laughing at this? It'll be so bad if we laugh at this. It's okay. You can laugh at this because it's... we are third world because of you. Might as well just laugh now.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
just laugh. Haha, we did it. So it's fine.
Dear, I don't know where to go from that. So,
white guilt.
White guilt. There you go. So, do I feel guilty? No, I think it's hilarious. There you go. And
No, I don't want you to feel
that's
guilty.
me cancelled.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel guilty at a comedy show. Later, after
No.
that.
Do you know what the thing is? The thing is that I look at things like, if we're not supposed to laugh, then why do we have a sense of humor?
Exactly.
Now, if there is a bad thing, things are bad. If you make a joke about a bad thing, I know a lot of comedians say this. I think Jimmy Carr said this quite recently, which is he puts it into his shows, which is it's almost become like a disclaimer where they're making fun of the fact that they have to now contextualize everything, which is, a bad thing is a bad thing.
Yeah.
A joke about a bad thing, taps into people's sense of humor.
Yeah.
I have a sense of humor, and I think we share a similar sense of humor, where the darker it is, the more button pushing it is. Sometimes I find it incredibly funny.
Yeah.
I find things funny where I like the shock factor.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I cannot believe somebody stood up on stage and said that to an audience.
Right.
The sheer... I mean, Jimmy Carr recently did one about Michael Jackson and dangling the baby over the balcony, which I am not going to say, but just the sheer shock factor.
Yeah.
I can't. But you could, I think you could YouTube it, but the sheer shock factor, I found it hilarious.
Yeah.
It's deeply offensive.
But to be honest, now, okay, here's the thing that I slightly, I have a different opinion on that, because I'm a comedy producer. I put acts on stage. And I have a problem with comedians who brand themselves as a dark comedian. I'll come on stage and I'll do dark jokes. Like, they're already branding themselves that way.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you should be a funny comedian.
Correct. Yeah, of course.
Like, dark joke obviously can pop up, like, as a joke that was, that was dark. But you don't have to brand yourself that I'm a dark comedian. So that you're just basically giving yourself a freedom that, I can say whatever I want, and I know no limits. I can say stuff that that would make you feel uncomfortable, and it doesn't matter if it's funny or not, but my job is to make you uncomfortable because I'm a dark comedian.
No, like you say, the job is to make people laugh.
Yeah.
That's where I think some of the real clever guys can get just to that point where you go, you're giggling, and you're like, woof, that is I've always found comedy is super intelligent people are doing it. That is a compliment to the people that get up on stage and go, I'm going to try and make you laugh.
Yeah.
Because the ability to get it wrong and just stand there
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's the audience narrative. Like if I watched that guy, he was so funny, but he was dark, man.
Yeah.
Like if the audience says that, and if the critics say that he's a funny comedian, his jokes were on point, but he was dark, right? So, but imagine like you brand yourself as a dark comedian. That's what I have a problem with,
100%.
like because you can't brand yourself as a dark comedian because
You can't set out to offend.
yeah,
You can't because
Exactly.
because then you're going to achieve that, but
Yeah.
it's with I'd say the difference in everyone's sense of humors,
Yeah.
which is great. Some
Yeah.
people laugh at this, some people
because
laugh
then
at
your
this.
writing process becomes all about, okay, what can I talk about, stuff that will make the society really uncomfortable. Babies, they love their babies, let's kill them in this joke. It just doesn't make sense. Like, oh, they love their pets, dogs, yeah, let's do something to the dogs.
Yeah.
Like you cannot brand yourself a dark. You start writing, you're just writing funny stuff, and then you're like, okay, oh my god, how about we give it this? And if it's funny, the audience will be like, oh, that was funny, but that was dark. Like, but
Well, I was going to ask you, where do you draw the line? But I think we're having this conversation
Yeah.
now, which is cool, because I do think with comedians, it's like it's unlike anything else.
Yeah.
Singing, acting, stuff like you can either sing or you can't, and then there's the
Yeah.
poor souls that can sing a bit, but they actually can't, but they
Yeah.
think they can, and they can be funnier than most comedians. But I think that with comedy, it's like you don't know. You're going to know. It's going to make you laugh,
Yeah.
But when you actually get up there and say it, like, that's the real test. But you're only going to find out once it's done and there's
Right.
no going back.
Right.
And I think I admire it so much.
I think when there's a joke that you're not very sure of, I personally would like to do it in a smaller room to a smaller audience so that I can at least get an idea of the ratio of people liking it versus disliking it. And if it's, let's say 4 is to like out of 6 people, let's say 4 people are liking it, 5 people are liking it, 1 or 2 are just probably making face, then I think it's a doable joke, which means that more people are going to like it versus more like people disliking it, right? So once I know that a joke which was a bit, tricky, or it was a bit cheeky, or it was a bit cute, so what I try to do is I try to do it in a smaller room and see how that flies there. And once I know that, okay, this could have a big laugh in a room, because in an audience, like let's say in a 100-seater room, if I am losing 20 people, 25 people in a joke, I'll keep losing them eventually. I'll keep losing more and more people because they'll start judging me. Like, oh, this guy thinks nasty. Like, he's...
Or you didn't make me laugh.
He's
with
not
that
he's
one.
not a good
So,
guy. Like, I think a very important aspect of being a stand-up comedian, a stand-up comedian is not famous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the time I perform in front of the audience where I am a stranger, right? So the whole aspect of you coming across as likable, that is very important. You have to...
Well, no one knows if you're funny yet.
Yes.
So when you go to see a big comedian,
Yes.
the trade-off is you have a higher level of expectation, but they have a higher success of delivery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because they bought a ticket for you, they are your fans, and then you can obviously experiment with anything. But for someone, for an audience where I'm a stranger on the stage, like my first 2 minutes, 3 minutes are very important, because I have to deliver the funnies, and at the same time I also have to come across as likable. So this has happened, and this has happened like where I recently did a gig, and I do usually well at that venue, but for some reason I started my set with a joke on consent, and I lost them throughout. All my best jokes just fell flat, bombed. And I knew what happened. I knew that I started with a wrong joke. And some people, it just did not fly with a lot of people. And then that joke's gone. It's been parked in Jabal Ali now. Nobody's going there to get that joke back. It's gone. But yeah.
So when you when you produce comedy and you have comedians you're selecting, do they audition for you? Do they send you stuff, or do you see them, or how do you know that you might not find it funny, but it is funny, and therefore they deserve a chance?
Yeah.
Because I think when I came to your show, you're obviously building up to the headliner.
Yeah.
So the first ones that are going on are the I would assume the proper test drives. They're the newest.
Yeah. So when I'm curating a lineup show, I think it's very important for me to understand that who's already on the lineup. So sometimes, for example, I have, let's say, 2 Indian comics on the lineup. So it'll be fun to have someone from Pakistan on the lineup. Yeah, you heard that guy. Yeah, we hate them. So it just doesn't matter now how funny that guy is. Like, the audience just start liking his presence on the lineup. For example, we have, let's say there's an Algerian comic on the lineup, so it'll be nice to have a French comic on the lineup. So it just, think about it like you're curating a tasting menu, right?
Yeah.
F&B.
Yeah.
Your starter can obviously not be as good as the main course, perhaps, but maybe the starter was important in that whole sequence. Of the
It's
tasting
part of
menu.
an experience.
It just, it just brings everything together. So when I'm curating the lineup, that's what I want to see. Maybe I just see that, okay, there are too many dudes in the lineup. There is no female perspective on this lineup. Okay, so I'm not gonna get another dude on this lineup. We need like more women coming on stage and talking about their perspective. Otherwise, it's gonna be like dudes and them silly. Like, I don't want that. Like, we need some feminine energy on this lineup. Otherwise, the show is only going to be liked by men. So
testosterone comedy.
There's too much. Yeah. So I think that all those things are, and then again, it not just your ethnicity, not just your gender. I think it all also depends on the energy as well. When I feel that, I have 3 comedians who deliver their jokes at a very low tone, like, so I was walking the other day. I need someone who comes on stage and screams.
Yes, I getcha.
Because we don't know what kind of audience we're getting. I have a control on what kind of comedians I'm putting, but we don't know what kind of audience we're getting on that day. If you remember that day when you showed up, it was a very low energy to start off with kind of an audience, and then it eventually built up. Now, if I put 2 low energy comics at the beginning, that show is gone because we are just driving them towards lower energy.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So, which is why I try to mix and match, energy levels and ethnicities and gender. Gender is not so important, to be honest, because
there's too many genders at the moment.
There's too many.
How could you book them all?
Luckily, we live here. But yeah, so I think that's what I look at when I'm curating the lineup. Yeah, so I don't usually care much if that made me laugh or not, because I wouldn't laugh when you send it to me. I'm like, no, I'd just be like, okay, this should work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of work. One thing you mentioned to me last time after this was you did a lot of work with private events, corporate parties. And funny enough, when we finished the last one, I was like, didn't have enough time and we could have spoken about this. And you went, yeah, you have to ask me about corporate parties. And I was just like, this, yes. So corporate parties, private gigs, how is that? I get the essence of these things go one way or the other,
So it's like the whole corporate gig, from the inquiry to you doing the gig. It's every stage is its own experience. When the inquiry comes to you, it's usually the agent who has zero idea about how comedy works. He's like, can you do 2 hours in like 3 intervals and everything? I'm like, dude, I'm not covering Coldplay. This is stand-up.
I know exactly what you're talking about from the other side.
This is comedy. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, you can't just book me for 2-3 hours of me doing comedy. Like, nobody's gonna listen to someone who's not preaching and and making their lives better. I'm making their lives worse. Like, you cannot have me on stage for 2-3 hours and stuff like. So these inquiries that I get, and like I've got like really funny inquiries where like a client reached out to me, agent reached out to me, and he's like, the client is looking specifically for an Indian comedian, and I was like, oh wow. That's cool. Wow, this is like first time I'm experiencing brown privileges. So,
did you have brown guilt?
I'm sorry?
Did you have brown guilt?
Absolutely not. I take whatever brown privilege I can get. Talking to the delivery drivers, talking to the taxi drivers, and letting them know exactly how I want to reach to a certain place. The clarity of communication is a brown privilege. So
I think I'm feeling white guilt right now.
Yeah. You should.
So I should, yeah.
So that inquiry came to me, and I really hope this podcast picks up, because I think there's a problem with the whole market with this particular thing. And then I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, but like, is it like an Indian company? Is it all Indians? No, it's a very mixed crowd. It's not an Indian company. And I'm like, then why are they looking for Indian comedians? It's because the management thinks Indian comedian will be cheap. Can you imagine?
This is a non-swearing podcast, but
how that nosedived for me from the brown privileges to the realization that I just got racially profiled. Now, he was a decent guy. He apologized for it. He said that because you're pressing for it.
Where was he from?
I don't ask for those things. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well,
because it's just
what was
like
his accent?
No, it was just a WhatsApp message from the event company directly.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
To be honest, he did tell me that because you're pressing for it so much, asking for details. So I'll tell you what the client actually said. Okay, because you're going to give me commercials and everything, right? And I know this is not done. Like, this is not a cool thing to say, but it is what it is. So, and then I told him that I appreciate the honesty, but I think as an event manager, as an event company, you should filter these requests out. You should push back, but then again, at the end of the day, there are too many event companies, too many artist management companies, and
there are substantial.
And you will be surprised. I don't want to name the company that you'll be surprised, like absolutely surprised, the company that came up with this, right? But anyway, so we get all these, all these random corporate requests and everything, and which is why. And sometimes people also get shocked by the rates that we quote. Like, oh, this is more expensive than the magician. This is more expensive than the musician. It's more expensive than the MC that we booked. But I think people, when they book a comedian for a corporate show, they need to realize we're quoting for our trauma that we're going to be experiencing there.
Like the WhatsApp messages that you're actually having.
We
at the
are
time.
actually quoting for the trauma, for no matter how good a comedian you are, you could go to a corporate gig where these guys are like, they just had. Now, so many times we get booked between corporate trainings, or they've just had feedback discussions with their manager. And suddenly, okay, now we have stand-up comedian Yash. Everybody's sitting, how the people are sitting, they're scared, they'll probably be fired next month. And then I'm coming on stage and I'm talking, hey brother, have you been to Global Village yet? I'm like, I don't think so. Going back home. So you're performing in front of people who are probably not happy at their jobs, right? Who don't like the whole, the other people who they work with, right? It's just not the environment that has been created for people to laugh. So I cannot do magic in 30 minutes to make these people happy, right? It was your job that these guys have been working with you for 3-4 years to make them a bit more jolly, to make them a bit more...
Well, from somebody who has attended numerous corporate trainings and conducted corporate trainings, a comedian would be the last thing you would probably want to book because of what you've just said.
Yeah.
Like, these things are long, whether it's team building or not. Sometimes it's fun. You either win or you lose, or you get a participation certificate, or you long seminars. finance, corporate people talking about numbers. But what's not happening is you're not all talking about the same thing that everyone in the room can connect to. You know?
And they feel that they've been held hostage, and now there's another thing that they need to sit through, which is this. Right, so this is not a perfect setting. Like, we are forcing comedy.
It's not a comedy setting.
Yeah, you're forcing comedy onto them. So we charge for our trauma, because I would remember those faces. Like, I could see my father in their faces. Like, I told you, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I could literally hear. I could see my dad.
I just realized what you said there.
Like, I could see my dad talking from their face. Like, told you.
Yeah.
So it's so obviously we charge for the trauma, and I've said it a few times. And like, I performed in like bizarre places. I once performed for someone's wedding anniversary or something. It was like some college some college reunion. So I'm like, oh, that's going to be a cool crowd, man. Like, college reunion and everything. When I got there, they went to college together 60 years ago. Like some 50, 60 years ago.
Envy, jealousy in the room, you know.
No, but you look, I'm saying, how old are they?
Yeah.
So this was not a recent college.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it.
It was not in recent graduation. This was before Christ. So my audience walked in on wheelchair.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how do I make them laugh? Like, there is nothing in my material that could connect with them.
Yeah.
You know, there was this one uncle who was laughing, and he was blind. So, like, that's.
At least he wasn't deaf. You know.
No, I'm like, because I don't know, like, what he was he actually in the room? Does he talk to like spirits?
Yeah.
What is he laughing about? You know, like, and then I think the one of the worst experience for me was this. I got booked for this overnight gig. Like, no, Yash, we want you to come to Abu Dhabi tomorrow, and you have to come and do comedy in Hindi, and we'll pay you this much. And I go there, and I don't get any other brief, right? I literally get no other brief. I'm like, okay, Hindi, it's a staff party, 300 people will be there. I'm in, you know. And when I go there, I got to know that they were basically factory workers. Like, they were factory workers from South Asia. I'm talking about the laborers. Like, so obviously, when they probably not watch stand-up comedy like ever. And when I go on stage, I just thought the best way to make them laugh. What's the agenda? When a comedian is on stage, the agenda is to make people laugh, right? I thought the best way to make them laugh is to do a lot of crowd work with them, engage them. And I was doing it. They were having a great time, right? But the manager sitting in the front who paid me, like, managers, like, they looked miserable. They probably made each and every worker's life miserable as well, right?
That's what managers do.
Yeah.
You know,
one of the manager, he walked on the stage and he's like, it's been 15 minutes. When will you start comedy? On the stage, while I'm on stage. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, I can picture it. You're just sort of, hello, you know.
And the announcer who was announcing all these events and all these awards, he had his mic with him all the time. And he switched it on. He's like, oh, you're not doing comedy at all? Or he's sitting there and he's saying that all these things on the mic.
Which is, so you can hear it.
So
you're talking and it's coming in.
Yeah, so they're basically
when are you going to start doing
insulting me
comedy?
while I'm on stage. And then I just...
Please tell me you just annihilated him.
Then I just thought, like, it's because I got paid, so I don't care. Yeah. So at that point, I just switched off the mic and I just walked off. Okay. And there was like pin drop silence, and I just walked off. You could hear my shoes, like, I'm walking off, like, you know. And some workers saying, "Oh, you were great," and everything. And then because they felt
your pain.
Yeah. So I walked off, and then with the same passion, I walked in. Because I forgot my diary right next to the stage. So they saw me walk in, walk out, walk in,
So you do the big
Yeah.
statement, I'm out of it.
So I did that 3 times.
And you're outside going, oh, I've got to go back in. I've got to dive.
And that, honestly, that, I'm not even exaggerating, that whole experience, that made me consider therapy.
Really?
Yeah.
You just felt so, well, no, how did you feel? Like,
it was such a, it was just like lack of confidence and everything. Like, it took me a few days to realize that it was just not a good fit.
but for somebody to, sit there with a microphone and go,
Yeah.
I need to actually look up at the stage and go, it's a bit like Kanye getting on stage with Taylor
that's,
Swift. It's like the kind are you going to do some comedy yet? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, are you going to shove that microphone? Yeah,
But that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, when you are, when you get shocked by something that is something that you were not expecting. If it's a heckler, the comedy show, I expect that, but I did not expect the managers to heckle me while I'm on stage. So now the natural reaction to that is not wit. It's just like pure anger and like words that you cannot filter. And so obviously, yeah, that's what I didn't want to do. So I refrained from it, right? So which is the reason, like, I walked out, and it took me like 2-3 days to like break it down in my head to understand that how I was not probably a fit for that event. Like, I was blaming it on myself because that's what decent artists would do. Like, they'll think like, what you could have done better. But like, then I realized that there was literally nothing that I could have done better. In fact, I was doing really well.
Good. I'd say the harsh reality is that the person that actually spoke and said, are you going to do some comedy? Are you going to be funny or what type thing, is feeling incredibly under pressure for actually booking you.
Yeah.
Because it's not the right thing to do. As I said earlier, it's a terrible thing to do at corporate
and just
events.
Imagine,
that they're going to get their, they're going to get reprimanded for this particular. So they've decided to just throw you under the bus in front of everybody, which is.
It's just a bunch of Indian uncles who become managers. They're just sitting right there. They're just like that. All of them thinking, we'll never let our kid do this.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that was since then I really filter out all the requests that comes to me. What exactly is the event?
Yeah.
Who am I performing for?
Do they have a sense of humor?
What's not there? Of course not.
No.
What's the setup? What's the setup? Because this is not the first time I got a gig like that. There's one time an immigration company called me to perform for them, and they said it's our event. Now turns out this immigration company called me to perform for people who are struggling to go anywhere in the world with their passport. And so they were showing them the dreams of moving to Canada and the UK on how you can do it, how you can move. And then they're like, okay, now this is it. Now we have a comedian. And then we have a break. And then they called me, and then I'm just, they're all stressed out. And I'm on stage. Luckily that worked.
Yeah.
Luckily that worked. That day it clicked. It was my day. Just, people found me funny, and like, they got engaging as well. And like, it was pretty fun. But like, I'm just thinking, that's so mean. I thought that was your internal staff event. Like, you just showed them like dreams of moving to the UK and the US, but you need so much money to move to the, and now everyone's thinking, where do I get that money from? Like, and then, but hold on to that thought. Now we have a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Like, who holds on to that thought like that? No one does.
That's
The
bizarre.
thought's running. Yeah. These are kind of events I end up doing. It's not,
No, the way I started that by saying you wanted to sort of tell us about corporate events. I didn't think these stories would come out.
I'm only telling you the bad ones. Yeah. There was this one time I had an amazing corporate gig that probably didn't pay me as much as I get paid at corporate gigs. But like, this was a yacht party corporate gig.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best corporate gigs I've done. It was for an ad agency, and that was so cool. And those guys actually became my ticket buyers. They come to my shows regularly, and obviously I've done like some really cool ones. I've done a corporate gig for TikTok, That was right after a pandemic, and that was an online gig.
Okay. See, this, I was actually going to ask this, which is you're doing a television show,
Yeah.
correct? And you can definitely will expand on that. But it was more about an audience that's not right there, you know, or how difficult is it to do comedy when it's being filmed, or when you can't see the reaction.
Yeah.
You know, you can't feed off of anything, you know, like, is it different?
But
Is
like,
it easier?
if you're talking about a live show, they always have a studio audience, because right now I shot a pilot for this Tonight late night show. Like, we had like 15, 20 studio audience. Like, they invite friends and family to be part of the studio audience. But like, obviously, if it's a sitcom or something, I mean, you can't really wait because you're playing a character, right? Like, when was the last time you and I were having a chat over coffee and you said something funny? Did you wait for the audience to laugh? Like,
Well, that's why they have laughter tracks. Is that right? Which, again, I think is quite.
Well, laughter track doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't come out.
No, there was. So I was a big fan of a TV show called The Big Bang Theory.
After that, I'm just saying recently,
Okay, they don't.
honestly, I cannot watch anything with a laughter track, because I felt like those laughter tracks were just unnecessary. Like, just making me laugh at something that shouldn't be funny. That guy fell down the stairs. Why should I be laughing?
Well, you know, the thing is, if you know, you can go to YouTube and you can go big. So I've seen The Big Bang Theory a lot. I loved it. I've watched it countless times, and and you can go and like Big Bang Theory without laughter track. And some of the first 6 seasons are legendary. The rest of it's quite pants. But the thing is that you can see some of the funniest things they did, and they removed the laughter track, and it just, you're like, yeah, that's weird. Like, because it's not.
Because you've watched it with the laughter.
I suppose, yeah.
But like, that's the whole point of those the sitcom culture in the 90s, the early 2000s. Like, you know, that was a sitcom culture. Like, nothing can be made without a laugh track. Like, if you watch like The Big Lebowski,
Yes.
it's such a weird, funny movie.
Yes. Very much so.
That movie would have been ruined with laugh tracks, because it's they are like digging laughter at like these awkward situation, and that's what that, you know, whenever I try to watch that movie with, you know, people who have not watched that movie, and it's really fun to see their reactions. Like, what was that supposed to be? It was something. It amused me, but I don't know what was it like. And that's the kind of humor I like, to be honest.
Yeah, it's an incredibly humorous film.
I think that's the real dark humor, like a dark humor.
Yeah, there's definitely the humor in that, I think, is character based.
Yeah.
Where they're just exaggerations of people that do exist.
Yeah.
So you're like, I mean, at the time in '98, you know, we all thought the dude was just a legendary character for his kind of what he was doing, what he was about, how he didn't care about society and everything, but turned out to be the hero.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, I'd advise anyone to watch that movie. But the question I wanted to ask was, so when they're making stuff like that, or when you're shooting, you've done the pilot or you're shooting TV, it's how easy is it to hit the punchlines or to do the characters when, like I say, when it's very structured, because you have to, there's lighting and there's cameras, so there's so many other people in the room that you see. Is it a different mindset? I don't know how to say.
When you're playing a character, or
not when you're playing a character, like when so you walk up on stage, people have been drinking, you go to a corporate, so the buy-in that you already know what you're getting yourself into. When you're in a TV studio, for instance, and there's lights and there's this and that person, everyone's got to be quiet, and then it's like, go on, be funny.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I've only done it once.
Okay.
So it's a very short sample size for me to comment on this. But, you know, I've done these the fake interview podcast that I do.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is on the lines of Between Two Ferns, and in that we don't really look for glory punchlines, you know, when we write it. It's just like the dynamic between two characters and the awkwardness between two, that just makes everything funny. Like, even an expression like, yeah, right. So even like that makes it funny. Like you don't even need like a big punchline about, hey, what do you think about the flights, huh? Like no, we don't need any of that, right? So I feel that, you know, it should be the same for a studio audience, for a live recording show, because I know that I'm playing with that. I'm playing a character on stage, and it's their job. It's a director's job to edit it and make it look funny. You know, it's their show. Unless and until it's my show, then I'll have to plan it differently.
Yeah. So this pilot that you've done, I mean, we're coming to the end of our time on part 2. There won't be a part 3. So. I'm just kidding. But there won't. But the thing is, what is the pilot about? What have you got coming up then?
It's very similar to SNL. With Russians on the crew. No, I'm joking. Yeah, but it's a brilliant Russian crew. And what they're trying to build, the UAE's own late night show or a tonight show, and it's going to be called Abu Dhabi Tonight. It's not come out yet, but I don't think the name's going to change. But they have an amazing team. They have this, you know, pretty well known presenter from Russia. Her name is Irina, and she's very famous on YouTube. She has like millions and millions of subscribers, and she used to do that in Russia. So now she's doing it in English here. Oh man, it's probably one of the best teams I've worked with. I mean, I've not worked with many teams, but like that was, you know, but like a very talented team to work with. Like they're not shooting on iPhones and stuff. They have like
yes, the real
crazy stuff like from everywhere. Sets change, and they have a band and so many things. And I'm like should I pay you to be a part of this? You know, it's that kind of a setup where you're just feeling the brown guilt.
You're feeling brown privilege to be there.
Is it free? Do I have to pay you to be on this camera?
Oh no, you're going to pay me. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it was amazing. And if it picks up, I think that's going to change my life.
Well, look, I hope so. I've seen you live. You are very funny.
Thank you so much.
And I'm not just saying that. You know,
okay, appreciate it.
I came to your show. And what I can say is,
and you left.
And I did leave. I had somewhere. I did have somewhere I needed to be. That's true. But I do remember. I think I saw the first 4, and the funniest thing that was going on. No disrespect to them, sorry, but the funniest thing that was going on was when you came on in between them, and you could really see the difference between someone that has a lot of experience and kind of knows what they're doing, and people that are up and coming, you know. And so, I really hope it works for you. I hope they do.
Well, I was that up and coming for quite a long time.
Well, I was about to say, like, as I do ask a lot of the guests on here, if there's one thing you want to end on to hopefully the up and coming comedians out there, what's the greatest piece of advice you could give them?
I think just to show up, and consistency, and not brainless showing up, like make some sense out of it, like showing up and doing stuff on stage, but also like going back and assessing what you did. This is one great advice that I got from this comedy writing book, was that in a week, you can be a writer twice. You don't really have to write every day. Just be a writer twice. But then every day, be an editor.
Okay.
Of what you wrote. And with comedy, so that was purely just comedy writing, like screenplays and stuff. But this applies so well on comedy. Like you write, you perform at a mic, you come back and you edit it and you add layers. Then you probably end of the week you write another bit, and then it's showing up and then doing your homework after that. So I think that's very, very important. It's easy when you say it, but like you also, when you start implementing it, you can't do it every week. But I'm able to do it, like, let's say, even if I'm able to do it like 1 or 2 weeks in a month or 1.5 weeks in a month, like it takes me somewhere. So I think that's probably the advice that I'll give to people, Yeah, I don't usually give advice if I'm not asked for it, because I've been accused of mansplaining a few times by men.
What a perfect way to end.
Yeah.
Yash, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
A bit too far away for a full-on handshake. Thank you so much.